And welcome back, everybody, to the Podcaster Nation. That's right. I said welcome back because I know you were just listening to our stuff and you loved it so much that you came back for more. I don't blame you. That was brilliant. Now, why do we have so much more? Because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters of all shapes and sizes, folks. This is the place where we all come together, lift each other up, and this is the place where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So, since our guest today is, in fact, a podcaster, among other things, let's get sailing and bring our guest in today. The creator of the AIT, Awareness Integration Theory program, which I'm going to obviously let her explain, psychotherapist, life and business coach, author, and host of the Inner Voice podcast. Please welcome to the show, Dr. Foojan Zeine. How are you doing, Dr. Zeine?
I'm doing awesome. It's so nice to be here. Thank you for the invite, Rory.
Well, thank you for accepting. I appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you have to say about this, all this stuff that we just listed. You've accomplished a ton. Before we get rolling, maybe just tell us a little bit about who is Dr. Zeine, behind the scenes, and what are you about and what brings you here today?
Um, I've been a student of learning about human beings, pretty much. First started with me, like who am I? What am I doing? What am I doing wrong? And what am I doing best? What my strengths and vulnerabilities are. And then, I got into the field, first healing thyself. And then from there, I got really interested in human mind and human being and, became a psychotherapist and a coach. And it's been almost like 32 years. And then looking at, whatever I learned, I wanted to share with others. So I went to therapy and then I became a therapist and, shared it with others. I worked with a lot of the masters and I'm like, ooh, I'm so excited to gain knowledge from them and then bring the knowledge to others. So that's how the path started. And then having, to share the knowledge in different way, whether it was writing books and, going on media, having the radio shows and then, the podcast shows, and then taking this into different realm of us as human being and in our relationships, right? So my relationship with myself, my relationship with my mate or intimate relationships with children, with parenting or with companies. We work. So what do we do, at work? How do we bring our best at work? How do we create businesses? So the same concept of what I learned in theories and working in interventions with people and working on myself, and then brought that together into a system, which is bringing all of the different kind of psychological theories and educational theories and taking the best of them and kind of putting them together in a structure, which became much more efficient. And so that created the awareness integration theory, which takes the cognitive part of us, the emotional part of us, the body mind connection, our behaviors and the actions and how we are responsible and create impacts in our life. So all of that became the theory, and then the theory we started going global, internationally, teaching therapists, coaches, bringing it into the school systems from daycare all the way to universities. And then, now with our latest book, taking it into corporations and companies. So it's spreading the news.
Okay, that's incredibly interesting. The entire concept is interesting. It's, if I can boil it down a little bit, it's a program, right? I mean, it's a method for people to, what was it, reduce anxiety, increase their confidence, that type of thing. Is that what it is at its core, or is there just a lot more to it?
At its core, Rory, it's about first becoming aware, right? Like we are one of the species, one of the rare species among all the species on Earth that has the capacity to be aware of itself. But we're not taught this, as a child, as we're growing up, we're only aware of the outside, what to do and how to please people, how do I survive people and all of that. So we're not really taught. So we become around like, around 25, 30, 40. And then suddenly we turn around and say, oh, who am I? What did I do? How did I screw up? Where did all this come from? So it's bringing the awareness, the tools of the awareness in to us. and looking at how do we think, how do we feel, how do we act, and what kind of reality are we consistently creating and co-creating with what's out there. And then obviously, as we're growing up, we're programmed based on our parents, our teachers, media, everything. And we kind of like run on automatic. So this kind of awareness allows us to see what our own programming is. Who coded us? How did we get this programming? So the awareness allows us to go back and look at the conditioning that we have of our beliefs, the core beliefs we have. And then we can pick and choose with that awareness. Oh, these belief systems have worked for me. Let's keep them. These belief systems worked at a certain age, but now it's not working anymore. Let's dump them. Let's upgrade my belief system. Or there are belief systems that are just a fallacy. They were not reality. I just made it up at that point. And it's not true. So let them go. And then look at your strengths and vulnerability, and then come and envision the tomorrow, see who you intend to be, and then find out who you are as your best, not other people's best, but who you are as your best. And then, commit yourself to that part of you, although you accept your vulnerabilities and constantly working on yourself, but commit yourself to your best and kind of envision to tomorrow and move forward. But then because you have the awareness tools, you clean up the past consistently, you envision the future, and you move forward, and you live in the present moment, being aware of yourself, because you could consistently shift and change. Like you're driving, where you're going, but you got to be present all the time in your driving, because things show up that you got to handle. So take the same analogy in all angles of life, right? You have a vision, where you're going, you're clear about what you're supposed to be doing, but you have the tools to be aware in the present moment, so you can change course in any time that you need to be the best of you and, live a fulfilling life. And with these mechanisms, through research, we find out that because we're cleaning the past, we're reducing depression. Because we're envisioning a positive future and going toward and feeling empowered, we're reducing anxiety. And because we're cleaning up all the negative belief systems that we're attached to ourselves, we're raising our self-esteem and self-confidence. And because we're creating responsibility about our impact and our results, we're creating self-efficiency for ourselves. So those are almost like the byproduct of having the system work for us.
Wow. Okay. All right. I thank you for that. That I have a much better understanding now after hearing that of what the program is. I love that. Okay. Now, there are a lot of programs that are out there that require you to be sort of in lockstep with a therapist or a psychiatrist or something. And then there are a lot that are sort of self-help and self-guided. From everything I've learned about this and you, this is a more self-guided thing, but I mean, maybe with a little bit of guidance, but it's more of a self perpetuated program. Is that correct?
It started with we're training therapists, and I'm a therapist, so we're training doing the clinical work. So we did a lot of the research on clinical work, and we saw that it was reducing depression to 75%, anxiety to 64%. Then we did this research in California State University, Long Beach, where there was no coach, there was no therapist. Two of my colleagues, which were professors, I wrote the book Life Reset, which was for public. So they took this book, and then we created modules for the students just to answer like a guided journaling of the whole. I put the whole protocol as a guided journaling and a process. So every week they had one process, one area of life, like school, your relationship with school, your relationship with your career, your relationship with your finances, with your intimate relationship, with your body, addiction, any of those relationships that you have with anything out there. And they would answer. And even with the concept of doing this without coaches or therapists, we still found depression going down about 63% and anxiety going down. It's like, wow. Okay. And that was the cause that we created the app. We went and created the Foojan app, which is you have 31 areas of your life and you could do this, on your own. And then we saw that people needed to ask questions, because if there's a coach or a therapist in the room, you also have the ability to go back and forth and ask questions. So then we created an AI chatbot for the app. It's called Mira. And in the middle of the process, you can always go and ask a Mira a question, and Mira is only trained. It's an open generative AI, but we've closed the sides of it because we want it to be safe for people and not ChatGPT, which is answering weird stuff. So it's not at this point might not be safe. So it's an open chat bot. It's generative and it's been trained in the AIT. So it responds back to you from, the concept of it'll ask you a little bit more of questions. It'll guide you. It'll give you skills. It'll give you like 8 to 10 exactly practical things for you to do. I look at it this way, Rory. You go to a store and you buy massage products, right? You come home, you do massages for your body because you're tired. And those massage equipments, they're amazing. And you could work with them, with particular spaces at home. Then it's a different experience when you go to a massage therapist, which you're laying down, you're allowing your body to relax, and you're allowing someone who's an expert to work on your body. Or you have an injury and you actually have to go to like a physical therapist, right? Which they look at the particular place where you're injured and they have to work with their expertise to get to heal you. Now, imagine the same thing with us as a human being. There's always something that we could use as a tool only by ourselves, like a self course that we could do. So the app is for that. Then I want to go to a coach. I want to go to a psychotherapist, and because there's someone there and they can, look at all the areas that I'm not looking or I'm not seeing, my, shadow side, places I can't see. So yes, I need a therapist or a coach. So we're training therapist coaches across the world so they know how to do this, and you can go. Or you have a trauma, a mental illness, and you need a little bit of a more of a specialized person, and that's where we have trained psychotherapists and psychiatrists who are trained on this model, which they will heal you because there is an illness. So in all levels, you could access this. And we've been taking it to education. I'm teaching it in Cal State Long Beach to students. We're teaching it in daycare. We have a particular daycare that only, raises kids from that. And we're taking it to school systems. So you could look at from different angles. Now we're taking it into company cultures, because you're, spending 8 to 10 hours sometimes in a corporation working. So we're kind of going into that culture and shifting it to this kind of like the awareness integration. So wherever you need it, it can be useful for you.
Okay. And that makes total sense. And I can absolutely see how this app could be very beneficial to someone on an individual basis, especially. If I'm dealing with certain things and I want to get on this app, it's going to give me some guidance. It's going to, sort of guide me through how to think, what to think about, what to look at, questions to ask myself. That makes a lot of sense. I'm intrigued as to how you can take that and then transfer that over to the corporate culture. Simply because, the first question on my mind is the privacy aspect of, how are you working with both sides of the corporate culture, but still maintaining total confidentiality with the people who are working with it?
So the way that we're taking it into the corporate culture, and the book that just came out is Awakened Leadership, is with one of my colleagues, Dr. Behram Bachande. What we're doing is we're bringing these exercises to, first of all, anybody who's in a corporate world first as an individual. So as you walk into your work at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., you're also taking with you your family life, your financial life, your children as a parent. All of those are still coming with you. So part of the work is for people to have access, individuals, whether you're a worker or whether you're mid-management or a C-level, as an individual, you have access to this technology to be able to work with yourself. So you can create clarity that this is what's going on. How can I be clear to leave this and now come to work? And what do I have to deal with work? Because work means also, work isn't just projects. Work is relating to other people who are not my family all day.
Sure.
The power
Yeah.
struggle that happens, it's the human dynamic. So this is about, first, every individual has access to learn, how do I handle this on my own? What am I thinking? What am I assuming? How am I feeling? What am I doing in order to create a better communication here, a better relationship here? How do I set boundaries? All of those starts from me. So if I'm walking into work, like a battle, or am I walking into to work my best, and I've learned how to handle people around me. And then with a mid management, they learn not only to handle themselves as an individual, but also how to handle someone who is their subordinate and their team. How do they work with their team? How do they work with their bosses, who are, they're kind of getting sandwiched in the middle. The mid management is always getting sandwiched from both sides.
Right.
And then you bring the culture of this type of awareness, this type of responsibility and accountability into meetings. So yes, your private conversations are yours, but in relationship, I need to be able to be responsible in, how I think of you, how I'm assuming you think of me, how I feel, how I'm expressing my feelings. So those all become a skill where you're using on a daily level. And for the C-level, who actually creates the culture from top to bottom, to not only to work on themselves and consistently bring themselves into the best of who they are, but also they learn through the system how to care for everybody who's working for them, and how to bring this caring into the conversation and into the whole system, and be accountable where they need to hold themselves and their benefit and their financial benefit, and the balance of caring for the human beings who are working for them, and watch this where they fall into one and the caring goes out the door, and then they have a basically a fallout, because people are having they'll create lawsuits, they create issues. Interestingly enough, worldwide, we have the lack of engagement from workers at this point, from employees, and absolutely lack of motivation from mid-management. So that culture has to change from the C-level in how they bring it into the whole system if they want productivity, because guess who's going to create the productivity? The employees, the frontliners are the ones who are doing. So it's bringing this technology of awareness and then integration of everybody being their best, being responsible for their own best in communication techniques, is creating a whole different culture of authenticity, caring, appropriate communication, and watch their power trips with each other, because human beings do power trips, right? I mean, starting age 3, we create a power trip with each other, and that you can definitely see in the corporate world, right? So it's like everybody becoming really responsible for, are they just doing power trips with each other, or are they cooperating and aligning into something bigger than what they are? And is that their best? Could they be their best in alignment and cooperation versus a power trip?
That's fascinating. Okay, so when you bring that into a corporate culture, if you don't mind me asking, is someone from the corporation, like an HR person or a middle manager or something, assigned to oversee the program, like from both sides? Or is it more of an individual base first, and then you come together in like meetings or something?
So first, the HR usually has to approve for a training. So first, when we go into a company and do an assessment, like organizational development, we do an assessment of what's going on. And then we create different types of training for employees. We give them the tools of how to create, bring the AIT into their own life. And then we bring it into the system of meetings. How do you approach meetings in cooperation and, communications? And then we look at like, what is that company's mid-management issues, and then deal with those and give them tools, and then the C-level.
Hmm.
So first, then it'll look like trainings, shifting the culture, and then individual, if individuals also need coaching after the assessment, then offer individual coaching to anybody, whether they're, whether they're employees or mid-management or C-level. So first, the door opens with one of the management or the HR that opens and brings an assessment of all levels. And then based on an assessment, giving tools on an individual, on a team level, on an organization level. All of those tools, exercises, ways of handling, communicating all comes in. And then we role model, we train. And then after that, then somebody becomes the person to oversee it and make sure that it continues to go that way from the
Interesting.
company.
Interesting. We have a bunch of business podcast folks who listen to this also, and I just know that from messages that I've got from them and that kind of thing. So I was curious how it was implemented at the business level. It sounds like it's very thorough. It sounds like you've really kind of dotted all your I's and crossed your T's here. So congratulations on that. Sounds very fascinating. You created this whole thing.
Yes. Again, what happened for me is as I started learning a lot of psychological theories, and I was side by side working with personal growth and going into companies, and obviously I created many companies myself. I was part of the corporate world. It was in hospital. In mental health hospitals. I was the head of 2 partial hospitalizations. I created a recovery program. So I also experienced side by side with the therapy world all of these business world, and then I see clients for C-level management and employees all these 32 years. So as these theories were coming and looking at how can we make these efficient theories, such as people will come in. I was known for one of the therapists in Los Angeles who did a lot of deep work, and I had clients who would come in 2 to 3 years. We used a lot of, tissues with crying, and if they left, they thought I was a great therapist. They left, I thought I was a great therapist. And at one point, Rory, I'm like, why 2 years, 3 years? These people are coming and paying me, and we're still dealing with the same, using the best theories that are out there. They're still coming and crying with the same issues. Now, this isn't working, although it looks like it's working, but it isn't working. So the conversation became, if I made this up, if I'm creating my own reality, I have to be able to dismantle that reality. And that's where the percolation started of, okay, where is it that I'm stuck and I'm not realizing that I created this? And that's where, I needed to go back. But first it was like, okay, we got to become aware of all these first, then you could go dig under the well and find out where is it that what incident happened for me that I made this up. I'm not good enough. I'm bad. I'm not this. I'm not that. And then how to dismantle it so it doesn't show up again and again and again. So that's how like the theory got created. And then it's like, okay, now that I cleaned up, then let me look at the future and who do I intend to be and create a structure for that. But then when you're doing this, then it's like, well, we live in relationships. We don't, human beings don't live in an isolated place, right? Like if I
Right.
put you to one room for 1 week, you're either going to get psychotic. That means you can't talk out loud to yourself, or you're going to find something in the room and relate to it. A cockroach is going, and that's going to be your pet, because all we do is we relate. This is what a human character is. So then start looking at, okay, now we're going to need to do this in all of the relationships and the roles that we have all day. And then one of the roles that we have is our intimate relationships, which are one of the most important. Our marriages, our intimate relationships are one of the most important factors in our life. And then the other one is our career, productivity. Like these two really, really affect us. So it was like, okay, now we need to kind of shift into these relationships and see how we could create this type of an awareness and cleaning up and create a conscious living in these two realms consistently, because that's what we do as human beings, right? We're raised to be productive and we're raised to be in relationships. So those are the most important relationships that we hold.
Wow. Okay. I mean, that again, that makes total sense after I'm hearing you say it. And before you said it, I'm going, wait a minute. But wow. All right. Congratulations. How long has this been out? When did you create this?
I think we started with testing AIT around like 2005. So around 20 years it's been working, and we're,
Oh,
doing
wow.
different kind of work with it and research around it. Yeah, the app has been out for about 2 years. The AI chat bot has been out, a year. The book Awaken Leadership, it just came out in May, so we've just brought it into the corporate world.
Excellent. Now, you mentioned the book a couple of times, Awaken Leadership. That's your latest book. You've written several. So congratulations on that for sure. Is the book about the AIT, or does it just talk about it a little bit and it's about something else?
No, the book is actually about organization, is like uniting organization development with AIT. So the chapters, like one chapter is for employees, one chapter is for teams, management, one
Ah,
chapter is for C
okay.
levels, and looking at like how do you change organizational construct. It has, it has exercises for each one. So it also talks about the theories of organizational development, how companies, the different types of theories for companies. So it's a very like valuable book for anyone, who's in HR, who's in management, who's in work, to be able to use. Business owners, from a mom and pop can use this all the way to, international corporations.
Excellent. That was the question I was getting ready to ask you right there. Was how big does the corporation have to be? So it's for anybody, even a little tiny mom and pop operation entrepreneurs.
Yes, absolutely. Because
Excellent.
part of it is who you are as a human being. And then goes into team. Your team could be 3 people, or, it could be thousands of people across the globe. And just, the factors will be different because of the team style and the levels and, the cultures, right? So if you have a company who is in United States and Korea and China and Middle East, obviously each one of these hubs have to be able to handle the culture of the place. And I think part of the AIT, because it shows up with awareness of who I am and bring myself, it handles the cultural part also. Bringing, who you are with your culture, and then melting these cultures. Because a lot of times when you go to large companies, all of these different cultures are melting together, and they have to learn how to adapt to each other in this scenario. Although they're bringing their culture and biases into it, but they have to collaborate in this project, whether they like it or not, whether they have biases or not. So it's like that awareness of, yes, I have a bias because this person is white or black or, Asian or Middle Eastern. This one is Muslim, this one is Jewish, this one is Christian, this one is this. Who cares? You got to work on this project, but you have to understand who you are inside and be responsible for who you're bringing into this collaboration of teamwork.
I love that. Okay, gotcha. So it doesn't matter who you are, doesn't matter how big everything is. This is good for everybody, and it's all in an app.
You can adapt it, yes. Yeah,
Perfect.
yeah,
All right.
absolutely.
Beautiful. Now, if they're looking for the app, I don't want to walk away from the app without telling everybody how to find it. So it's called the Foojan app.
Yes, it's Foojan. You put it in Apple Store or Google Play. It's both for Android and Apple.
Mhm.
People have like 3 days free. Go check it out and enjoy it.
All right, awesome. I'm gonna have to look that up now because my wife listens to all my podcasts. She's gonna hear this one and she's gonna be like, "So, did you get the app? What are we talking about?" She's gonna be like waiting for me to start working on myself now.
There you go.
Thanks for giving me homework. I appreciate that, Doctor. All right, perfect. Okay, so now I've listened to your podcast. Um, how do you? Let's start at the beginning with the podcast. How many episodes do you have? How long have you been doing it?
I think we have about 411.
Okay, so
Um,
go ahead.
it's it started with me going to a lot of seminars, which psychology seminars, and I was always wowed with the knowledge of these masters. And I'm sitting there, and every cell of my brain is having too much excitement. And I'm like, okay, I need this because this is being taught to us in this level. And I want people to hear it. I want people to have access to it. If I'm having access to it, I want them to have access to it. So it started with me asking these people, can I do an interview with you? And the interviews would be, at one point I had like a cable television show, and then I had a radio show on LA radio. And then obviously when the podcast world started, it was a natural concept to just bring that. But that's how it kind of started. It started with me getting excited about information out there, and I wanted to share that information. So it was more like an interview of give me information so that everybody can hear. And from there, I think a lot of people, like publishers and people who were listening to it, they started sending me authors who had, were publishing and about the field of whether it was psychology, sociology, anything to do with humanity, better life, whether it was in the business world or couples world, intimacy, or spiritual, or, meditation and mindfulness. So then the whole world started sending me, instead of me going after, people to come to be a guest. Then, they're constantly now sending me, we want you to have an interview. So one of the things I do is this excitement. I ask them to send me a copy of their book. I go through the book. Sometimes I have the, chance to go read every line, and sometimes is, working through it. And then, to have the interview. It's really, for me, I want to learn. And I get excited about learning. And then based on that, it's just being shared with everyone.
Hmm. Okay. Now, you mentioned a couple of times that's how it started. So is that how it still is on the podcast? And is that what people can expect when they go to listen to it?
Yes, the podcast is pretty much talking to the experts. Some of these experts are academic experts, right? They're from universities, they've been teaching this. And some of the experts are life experts, like yesterday I was interviewing a woman who had lost her husband through cancer. And she wrote a book about the process of her grief. And then after she went through this, after this, she became a grief specialist. She created, all of this online community of people who were going through grief. So that to me is a life expert, right? They're going through this, they've gone through all of these issues, and they're sharing it with other people. Or I have, professors from Harvard who are, their expertise is, what they teach in their books, and, the science of the brain and the body and the vagus nerve and all of those, and they're sharing it. So it's a lot of information, whether it's personal information, stories of who they are and what they've experienced or what they've learned. And it's ultimately all of the subjects is somehow around human and human condition, mind, body, health, wealth, love, self-confidence, anything that shows up with what we have to deal with as a human being. It's an open conversation.
Nice. Okay. So is it safe to say that you use the podcast primarily for education and then also for branding and marketing?
The branding and marketing so far has only been around AIT.
Okay.
The only other person that I chose, and I asked them personally if I could market their academy for them. It's one gentleman that I met. I went to his workshop, and he was talking about he was an investor in for so many years. It was an angel investor. He opened up a lot of companies. And almost as I was talking to him, and I watched him in this academy work with other people who were doing businesses, was almost like one of these guys from or ladies in Shark Tank, sitting there and calculating and
Hmm.
responding in such a beautiful way. And and I asked him, I said, can you go and look at my app and look at all of it? And he was so gracious that for an hour just coached me on the concept of the business aspect of the app and the growth of it and all of those. And then for that, I he was so generous that I offered to him, I said, I like to also promote your academy because it's beautiful. Like, people with $1 can be a member of this academy, people who have businesses, and they can learn from this jewel of information. So, I asked him if I could also, brand him because of his generosity. I also wanted to be generous. But the branding of it only has at this point our own products, which are the books, the apps, and explaining of all of that. The rest of it becomes branding of the guests who are coming with their books or whatever product that they have, which is useful to humanity. And it's like bringing that and branding them and allowing them to have the space to share.
Nice. Nice. I can appreciate, yeah, providing the platform for the other folks. Absolutely. Okay. And then what do you do to promote your podcast to get more people to listen to it, that type of thing?
I think a lot of I think I've been on Podbean. Yeah, I'm on Podbean, and it just moved from, now it's almost like around 30,000 people who are listening to it and, sharing it. Then I take the episodes and put them on my social media. So the links are the link. We have a YouTube link, which goes on my YouTube channel. And then I have the podcast link. And then I send both of those links to my guests also. So when it's aired, I send it to them. So we do together in social media, we blast it, right? So I have about around 80,000 among all of the social media between Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, X, and TikTok. So between all of these and the YouTube channel, we have around 80K of audience. So we start blasting it, and we blast it in sometimes increments. Like we take a little bit of it, and because as you know, people don't have a lot of attention at this point. So we'll take like, 60 seconds of a conversation and blast it and say for the full conversation, go such and such. And it seems like that it's been happening. One thing it was funny because one of my clients actually, when I was going to talk to him, and he said, your podcast just takes too long before it goes into the point. So, because, I have an opening. It's like, I know you. I don't need to hear you anymore. I wanted to hear the guests. It's like, it's too long. So I started listening to some of the other podcasts and learning from them. And I'm like, okay, so I'll take a little clip now of a little bit of a conversation that could be, new or provocative or something, and then put that right at the beginning. And then, go into the introduction and then the actual conversation. So those are the pieces where I've had to kind of get what people are sharing with me that, the intro has been too long for them. And then you could see the concept of the attention going so low where I'm not interested in these fluff at the beginning. Get me the juice immediately. So those are the things I keep learning as my audience keeps sharing with me.
I love that. Give me the juice. You got to get the juice. All right. Yeah, that's perfect.
And I think
Listen, go ahead.
the dichotomy of this interesting, like, only give me 60 seconds because I have no other attention span, and then our podcasts are getting longer and longer because I personally also listen to podcasts that are like an hour and a half.
Right.
So we have these, the two sides of this. Give me the juice, but podcast is actually the only thing that at this point you could go on for an hour and a half and 2 hours, and people love this conversation and listen to it while I'm driving or I'm exercising.
I think once in a while, and you know what, you're probably better qualified to answer this than I am, but doesn't it just seem like sometimes people just want something to complain about?
True.
I mean, if you had no
True.
opening, they'd be like, I have no idea who you are, or
Yeah,
what you're
many
talking to.
times it's the conversation is about, uh, I like it, but let me give you the upside of my complaint about it. Yeah, let me complain about it.
Absolutely, absolutely. Have you had a chance to, or tried to, monetize the podcast itself? Or is it still just, like I said, information, in terms of how you do it?
So far, it's just been information. So far, it has been information. I To me, it was interesting because I used to pay for radio spots. I used to pay for television spots. So owning my own podcast actually became more like, okay, if I had to pay to go, on a studio, if I had to pay to go to do all of this stuff or pay to advertise for myself, it was more expensive. So having my own podcast to not only, brand my own products, but even just, the amount of money that I pay for, let's say, Podbean or some like Podmatch, Podbean, or any of these places were actually less expensive. So to me, it was still worth it to not monetize it because I wasn't paying out. But I think the monetization is a great idea. But I looked at some of these places that you could, people come in and say that they want to have an ad in your podcast, and some of the companies that were there, they weren't necessarily the companies that I wanted to brand. So I haven't really thought about what type of companies I want to put my name behind. And I say, okay, because if I feel responsible, if I'm
Okay.
sharing with someone, come on, take this product. And if it harms them in any way, that I know legally I'm not responsible, but humanly I feel responsible because I said it. So that has kind of hold me back. And that's why, with this particular academy, I said, yes, absolutely. I like to do it because I gained the experience of how amazing it was. I'm like, I want people to know about it. And you could be a member for $1. I'm sure everybody has $1 to pay and gain all this experience. So those are the things that I gladly will take a stand for. But other products, I have to kind of look into and see if this is a product that I can share and feel good about. That if somebody uses it, that they're not harmed. I think that has been holding me back a little bit.
Hmm. Interesting. I
I'll
appreciate
take
your
any
honesty.
advice. I'll take any advice from you.
That's a conundrum that a lot of people have to deal with who are podcasters, because you are connected to the advertiser, whether you like it or not, because the podcast is so personal. So I totally understand that hold up. And that makes total sense. There's hundreds, if not thousands, of ways to monetize. So it just if you're having the conversation, it's a great place to begin. So I'm glad that you're that protective of your podcast and of your listeners. I think that's great. Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
that's
think
great.
because I'm a therapist, the concept of safety for my clients almost like it's been embedded with, and that was the whole thing. Even with the AI chatbot, was like we need to make it safe. Like if
Hmm.
somebody's coming here and asking a question, and I'm not there personally, I want to make sure that this concept becomes safe. And I think that has been embedded because of being trained as a psychotherapist first.
Oh, there we go. I'm having the hardest time with my mute button today. I have no idea why, but the I can appreciate that for sure, especially given the your ethics that you deal with every day in your job. I always like to ask a question of all the folks who come on here. It's kind of my corny question, and that is, as you're doing your podcast, what is it about doing your podcast that you love the most, and what is it about doing your podcast that you just absolutely positively hate the most?
What I love the most is the ability to connect with people across the world that show up and offer their experience. I think is a jewel in because information is information, but if when people bring the information and add their own personal experience to it, suddenly it becomes unique. So this concept of being with anyone from any part of the world, from any uh, culture, ideology, belief system, sitting together and having a dialogue. I've had dialogue with people who've had absolutely a different political or religious or ideology to me, and the beauty of being open to this dialogue and learning from each other, to me, is the best thing that really excites me. The thing I hate is when people are supposed to be there and everything is set and then they just don't show up or last minute. I used to
Yeah.
do this live because I was ready. I was used to like radio live or television live. I used to do this live. So that day, it was the day that we came live together, and then people flaked. And it was so upsetting to me because of not for my time only, but because I had promised the audience that this would be live. And then I'm sitting there going, what? So a couple of times, because they didn't show up, I did the whole show on my own, and I'm doing my monologue and stuff, but I'm just not a monologue person. I love the dialogue, not the monologue. So I decided, that's it, I'm just going to record. And so now I have 8 weeks in the queue, and I'm like, okay, I'm safe. So if somebody just doesn't show up, I'm like, all right, I'll take this hour and do something else. But I know that at least my audience can know that every week something is being given to them. That piece. And I'm not saying that I haven't had to do that if there was an emergency, like I got sick or something, but
Sure.
I told them, I shared with them, profusely, I apologized, and I attended. Those are not like, if I get it, like, like one person immediately said the internet wasn't working. I mean, I understand there was a flood, the internet wasn't working. So those are not the ones I'm talking about, but people like, they kind of just forget, or it's not their priority. And that to me wasn't very professional.
Sure. That's a good one. That's one of my favorites right there. So I do anywhere from 8 to 10 interviews slash meetings per day, and I can almost guarantee I'll have at least one no-show per day at this point. So how do you feel? Does it seem like that's getting worse?
I think that in the world of podcasting, I think because anyone has the ability to create one, they're not necessarily sometimes looking at it as a professional conduct. And I think that, we usually, if you have an appointment with someone, you owe them to communicate in one way or not. The other side is that I think these are, when you're not charging, and I don't charge people for attending to my podcast. So another concept is when you're not charging and they don't have something in their world, then that's what happens, right?
Hmm.
So it's like it's okay for them to just kind of like put it out, right? So that's, I think, one of the issues. I think for podcasts that you pay, I think you probably might deal with it in a different way.
Yeah. Yeah. If you've paid to be on the podcast, you're going to show up.
Yes, yes, because you've paid for it and you're going to lose it. So I think that's part of the concept. But yeah, that's not what I do right now. I don't charge. I just, again, this is for me to learn.
I love it. Absolutely love it. As we kind of, pull this together, I appreciate everything you brought to the program and everything you've shared today. I'm really looking forward to checking out the app. Um, I mean, 400 plus episodes. You've been doing this for a minute. So clearly you've, had the opportunity to run into some things, to overcome some obstacles just to make it that far. And congratulations on making it that far, because that's absolutely wonderful to hear. What's your best piece of advice for podcasters that are out there who are just not quite where you are yet?
My advice is to get to know who is your guest beforehand. So do your homework, because I think I've been on podcasts where the person had 10 questions and it was a robotic question and answer versus a truly a dialogue. And I've had people who came to my podcast and they were excited that I read their book. They were excited that I brought my own experience into their dialogue. I made sure they shine. I wasn't taking away their shine, but I wanted to, with my adding the experience to their experience, actually make them shine more.
Yeah.
And I think I got the feedback from my guests that they really appreciated that piece versus, and they said, like, we go into podcasts and there's like 10 questions, or that, they tell people, give me your topic question. And they just revert, like they ask the question that the person sent, but there's like a robot sitting here. Like there's no part of this host within the system.
Yeah.
So if I wanted to share something with the podcasters is, if you love this, because if you don't love it, you're not going to be able to monetize around it. If you love what you do, and if you really get involved in a conversation with another human being because you love learning, because you're truly curious, and you didn't start the curiosity at the record, you started the curiosity at the time that you had the person sign up for you or you invited them, do a little bit of research. I've had podcasts who have interviewed me before and we really connected before. I don't do that. I don't have time to do interviews before, but I really loved it when we did an interview before for the person to really, for us to connect. So when we actually met for the podcast to start, we already had a little bit of a relationship. And sometimes I wished I did, because I like somebody's material, and then I have a guest where actually when they show up, the connection isn't there. Like it doesn't matter how much I want to connect, the connection, is just not there. And sometimes, like, yeah, if I had the interview, I wouldn't even have this person, because if I can't connect with them to have a dialogue for 40 minutes, 45 minutes, then, it's just going to flop, because people feel it, when you're hearing, when you're seeing two people together or hearing them, if there's a connection going or not. So if you have the time, do your homework, meet with someone, even if it's 5 minutes, to really connect before you actually meet for the podcast and recording starts.
Excellent advice. All right. I love that. Fantastic. Well, before we part, you've unpacked a lot in terms of, advice and what you do and everything else, especially with the AIT. It's very laid out. It's laid out very well. And I think it's very understandable for folks, but it's not the simplest thing if you miss a couple of lines. So I want to make sure that we've kind of covered it all. Is there anything that I didn't ask you? Is there anything that we talked about maybe you want to go back to and double down on, or any sort of like, last thing you want to leave with everybody, about what you do, who you are, your app, that type of thing? I just want to make sure that we're covering everything that we got.
The only thing that shows up for me is, we are responsible for our own fulfillment and happiness. And there's nothing wrong with us. We just don't have the skills. That's all. We don't have the skills in how to think, how to feel, how to, take care of ourselves, how to be in relationships. And there's a lot of information out there. You don't have to figure this out all on your own. There's a lot of information. You don't know how to create a relationship. There's a lot of people who have amazing relationships. There's so many books. Just learn, create the skill for yourself. You don't know how to be happy. There's so many other people who are fulfilled and happy despite what circumstances have been. Start learning. I remember, I was very afraid of not death, but, being incapable completely, until I saw this, the physicist who, was sitting there like this and was creating this concept about the world. And I'm like, okay, if this guy's sitting on a wheelchair and only his head works and even his mouth at one point did not work, and he was just like telepathically working with the computer, I'm like, hey, if this dude can do it, I can learn from him. So it's more of whatever is obstacle is holding me back. Either it's not my natural thing, let it go. You don't have to be great at everything. Let it go. Just be great at a couple of things, but the ones that you're going to be great at, enjoy yourself with your greatness and whatever it is. And I think we're responsible for that. And those are the reason these tools are, I'm hoping that these tools become nationwide and 8 billion people have access to it, is because of this. You know, you deserve to be happy and you're responsible for being happy and fulfilled. So, you know, you got one life to live. Come on, let's do it.
That's a great way to wrap up. I appreciate that very, very much. I'm glad I asked you that last question. All right, folks, the creator of AIT, psychotherapist, life and business coach, author, host of the Inner Voice podcast, and the creator of the Foojan app, available everywhere you can find apps, Dr. Foojan Zeine. Dr. Zeine, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing everything that you did. It was really great. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Thank you. It was awesome connecting with you and everyone who's going to be listening or viewing us. And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you so much. Folks, this has been another awesome episode of the Podcaster Nation. And the reason we get these fantastic guests on here is because this is the podcast that's about podcasters, it's for podcasters, and it's done by podcasters. This is the place, we proved it again today, where the rising tide truly raises all ships. So keep sailing.